Original story. Am I the a-hole for distancing myself from my daughter after she took her mother's side? I 50 meters found out that my wife 49F of 20 years was having an affair. I was completely hurt over this and have started divorce proceedings. Obviously this has been hard on our 4 children, but I cannot spend the rest of my life with someone I can't trust. Before we got married, my wife's family had money and demanded I sign a prenup. I had no problem, but since then the family money has been lost due to bad investments and lawsuits. My wife was a SOM for the majority of our marriage. Our youngest child is 19 and because of the prenup she can't get alimony. In short, my wife will be screwed. The only thing we own together was our house, and while it is paid off, my wife won't be able to afford the upkeep or HOA fees. So she will effectively be homeless. I have no intention of giving her any type of support for any reason. Since serving my wife divorce papers, I have refused direct contact as my lawyer has advised. But she's now playing dirty by getting the children involved. We have 2 boys 23 and 21 and 2 girls 25 and 19. And my wife has been pleading with them to get me to agree to halt the divorce proceedings in favor of counseling. After I told my children that I had no interest wasting any more of my life with that woman, they have all essentially backed off except for my oldest, Christy. She's very close to her mother and can't imagine life where her parents aren't married. Christy tells me that her mother realizes her mistake and will do whatever it takes to make things right. She says that I owed it to the family to work things out. I refused and told her that it wasn't her place to make those kinds of demands. Since then, the only time Christy talks to me is when she's sobbing and asking me not to destroy the family. I understand that this is hard for her and offered to pay for therapy so she can cope. But she said there wouldn't be anything to cope with if I wasn't trying to divorce her mother. Since Christy is being too emotional to act within reason and refuse therapy, I have been resolved to limit contact until after the divorce. However, my other children are saying that Christy's behavior is getting worse. Am I the a-hole for taking a step away from my daughter for a while? Update for more info. Alright, I read a couple of responses and I just wanted to clarify some things. Clearly my "she will effectively be homeless" comment was misinterpreted, so let me set the record straight. Because my wife and I own the house together. So long as we sell the house and split the proceeds, she'll get something. My wife didn't give up her career to raise my children. We could have hired a nanny, but she didn't want that and chose to be a SOM for our children. Because of her family money, she was getting a monthly allowance from the estate. Plus I paid for a housekeeper to make things easier on her. Once my wife reached 30, she started getting a monthly allowance from the family estate and the prenup addressed that so I couldn't claim half. In exchange, she couldn't get alimony. I didn't want my children to get involved in the divorce. My wife decided to do that. And even brought up the reason why as a form of a preemptive strike. I only talk about the divorce when someone else brings it up. Which Christy wants to do all the time. I am not abandoning my daughter. I am just lowering contact with her until the divorce is finalized because she's not letting up on trying to pressure me into taking her mother back and refuses to go to therapy that I will pay for. Also, to the comments asking why my wife cheated, it's a little offensive. I don't know how that changes anything. Or that I should care. However, the guy that she cheated on me with was younger, looked like he couldn't be any older than 30, so take that information and do what you will. Edit update. Mods refused to approve a separate update post, so here's the conclusion. I just wanted to say that I was very grateful to all your kind words and support in how to deal with my daughter. I decided to follow some of your advice and have a scheduled sit down with her to explain that what goes on between her mother and I is not her fault. And that I simply can't ever go back to a woman who deceived me in such a big way. I told her that I try to be as forgiving and empathetic as possible, but I will not ever tolerate people who lie with malicious and selfish intent and try to cut them out of my personal life as much as possible. I was very calm when I said this and tried to be as loving as I could to my child, but it didn't work. Christy ended up breaking down and again tried to get me to convince me not to divorce her mother and just forgive her. I refused and in the end went NC with Christy for a little bit. I only spoke to her again 2 days before my other daughters, Jane 20F. birthday, through a text asking her to not bring up the divorce since this was going to be the first time my wife and I would be in each other's presence since I filed. I sent the same text to her mother. And I didn't hear anything from either or them. On Jane's birthday, things were a little tense and awkward, but I thought it was going good. Until my wife decided to be passive-aggressive with a speech about how good it is to have family together during important events. Everyone saw through her crap, and my son, Jack 23 meters, called her out on it and said that she was selfish to bring this up on Jane's birthday. Christy started defending her mother and Jane. understandably upset. Revealed that the only reason Christy was on their mother's side for reconciliation was because she didn't want the fact that she not only knew about the affair but helped her mother cover it up. There was a big fight that wasn't going to get resolved right then and there. I ended up leaving and was even more heartbroken all over again. Not only did my wife betray me but my own daughter too? I knew she was closer to her mother than me. And I was okay with that, but this? I don't know what I did to make my eldest daughter so disloyal to me. But I am now resolved to go full NC with her until after the divorce and possibly for the rest of my life. Am I the a-hole for distancing myself from my family over a perceived injustice? I did something that I now feel incredibly guilty about. And I need clarity. I'm 25F and everything I talk about here is solely from my perspective. I've been told that from my parents' perspective and even my family's perspective, this looks completely different. My entire life I felt like my parents heavily favored my sister. She's a dance prodigy and so our entire lives. Everything was always about her, recitals, practice, vacations to take her on auditions, etc. I'm 3 years older than her and unfortunately, we were never close BC of this. My grandmother died on my birthday. My mother was very heavily impacted by her death and spent all my birthdays crying, incapable of celebrating with me. Out of respect, I always had very small, simple birthday parties while my sister always got really big ones. My family now tells me it was because my parents didn't have the money for the party I wanted Barbie themed, and when they suggested something different I threw a huge tantrum. They also told me the only reason my sister had a big party in my eyes was because there were more people, their dance friends and their families, and she got more presents. When I was 19 years old, I moved away for a job opportunity. My parents never even inquired about my job or helped me move. My family tells me that is because I was very hostile when anyone would ask me about it, and so they assumed I didn't want to talk about it. So fast forward to today. My family knew I had a BF, but I never told them that we got hitched in February. I felt that since none of them were interested in my life, why would I share my life with them? My mother would call me about once a week to talk, but she never asked anything substantial, just a very casual "how are you doing?" and I felt she did it more out of obligation than anything. So on Monday they all found out I'm married through FB of all places and broke out in hysterics. My aunt called my sobbing, asking me why I hated them, that they tried so hard to reach out to me. My dad told me that I had hugely disappointed them. I told him that they didn't get to be upset about this since they had never cared about me or my life before. He just said that wasn't true at all. My sister wrote me a long message about how she couldn't believe how selfish I was and how my mother was gray with grief. Nobody in my family understands where I'm coming from. They all say my parents have always deeply cared about me, but that I was a horribly entitled child that always expected more than they could give, and that this is the last straw. My grandfather, whom I love deeply, is telling me I have made up a story in my head that just isn't the reality. I'm hurting beyond belief. I really thought I did the right thing cutting out my family because I thought that the way they were making me feel left out and ignored and never good enough was a valid reason, but now I'm being told that it's my own fault and that it's all in my head. AITA? Edit. I thought I should add because I mentioned it in the comments a few times. I talked to some of my best friends from childhood, people that knew me from birth but that's not really that close to anymore, and they pretty much all told me that I was kind of a horrible kid. I've been getting stories from our childhood that I remember completely differently, but they all agree that I would throw tantrums and act really entitled because my parents owed me. I don't think all of these people are just trying to gaslight me. That's not like them, especially my childhood best friend. Something is wrong with me and of how I saw my family for my entire life. I know my grandfather at least would never ever lie to me. Edit 2. Thank you so much to everyone for commenting. You all have given me a lot to think about. I know most of you are in the "your feelings were valid" camp, but honestly, no, they weren't. Yesterday evening I had a very long talk with my grandfather. I've always loved him deeply, and he laid down a few truths for me that hurt very much, but that I can recognize to be true. He's old and laid back, and I always perceived him to be on my side, so to speak, because he would also go out of his way to spend time with me when I was a little. Yesterday he told me that he actually hurt his relationship with my sister over that because he clearly treated me differently. Which he did because he could see that I was starting to alienate myself from everyone at a young age. This man would never lie to me. He doesn't have the energy to do it either. I think I still have a lot to think about and digest, and my hubby is trying his best to be there for me. He says he married me for the person I am today, even if I'm starting to realize that maybe the reason so many of my relationships with my family and friends ended on such bitter notes were my own fault and my own perceived notions of I deserve better. My sister and parents aren't talking to me, and my grandfather made clear to me that this will not change for a while and that I shouldn't expect them to forgive me anytime soon. I told him to please let them know I'm more than willing to talk. I don't know where to go from here. My old childhood friends have been helping me come to grips with a few details of my childhood. I broke a neighbor's nose because he was teasing me versus I broke the nose of a neighbor who was trying to get me to join in their play, and some family friends have reached out to me to help as well. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my video, please subscribe and leave like.